Why is it the case that evolutionists and creationists look at the same evidence, yet reach very different conclusions and results? I have put together for you 10 points that, in my opinion and my experience, after going through numerous conversations with many evolutionists and after listening and reading numerous arguments about evolution, those 10 points represent the basic 10 differences between the way evolutionists think and creationists think. If you are a person who is looking for the truth, if you want to go and open scientific research papers or articles or books or listen to lectures to make up your mind if evolution is true or not, it is very important for you to listen very well to those 10 points so that when you are reading and when you are studying, you are aware of the way that those research papers and those arguments are built, so you are able to make the distinction between what is a fact and what is a hypothesis and a theory, and hence you are able to reach correct conclusions. If you are an evolutionist or a creationist, it will really help you so that you bridge the gap of understanding and you are able to know why your point is not reaching through to the other side. So, regardless who you are, if you are interested with the topic of evolution, fasten your seatbelt, have a comfortable chair, a nice hot drink, and let's go through the 10 points together. So the first point is what I would call systemic bias. And what it means is that evolution is always assumed to be the solution. But why is this the case? Actually, from the point of view of evolutionists, they do not consider it bias. You need to understand that many evolutionists consider evolution not only as a theory, but they also consider it a fact. So when they are approaching a problem, they are not answering the question if evolution caused it. The question is how evolution caused it. And you will find it at the very beginning of research papers and articles and speeches and courses and lectures and videos of science explainers, that when you're asking about a phenomena like the one that I'm asking about, or this question about how did multicellular life happen, the answer is always it must have evolved from unicellular life, and then they are just looking for a path. So when I said it couldn't have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cell kind of progression, because there are no fossils and there is no evidence for any few celled organisms, you will find the proponents of evolution will say, okay, one cell became a colony and then the colony specialized. But there is no evidence that colonies can specialize and form multicellular organisms. Colonies are multiple cells together. How will they go? They will tell you, we will find later. But why are they doing this? Why are they biased this way? It is because of this. Because in their mind, in the foundation of thinking of the evolutionary mindset, evolution is not only a theory, it is also a fact. Now I am calling on the people who are doing this research. Is it, in your opinion, fair to yourself? Is it correct in terms of the scientific method to approach a problem with a preset mind about the solution? Or is the correct thing is that evolution is innocent until proven guilty? Why do you say that evolution must be always the cause? Isn't this fairly described as bias? The reason this causes plenty of tension and plenty of misunderstanding is that a creationist or somebody who is neutral will immediately accuse an evolutionist of treating evolution as a belief system, because you are asserting it even without evidence. Evolutionists from the other side will tell you, we are using evolution as the solution because there are heaps of evidence for evolution, so we're considering it a fact. The same way we explained other phenomena using evolution, this one will also become evolution. Even if we do not know today, we will know tomorrow. And this is really a great part of the schism that is there between people who are proponents of evolution and those who are proponents of creationism and those who are in the middle. So for you as somebody who's looking for the truth, be aware 100% of this when you are reading a scientific paper or listening to a scientific explainer, because you will need to set aside his own assertion that evolution caused it and look at the real evidence for you to be able to find the truth. Now, the second point is what I call a house of cards. And what this means is that you will find, for example, a specific problem being studied by evolution, like, for example, the emergence of multicellular life, multicellular organisms. And then somebody is looking at that piece of the problem and making a paper, and he proposes a solution and he gives it a name. And this solution does not have enough evidence, so it is a hypothesis. Then somebody else is working on another piece of the problem, and while doing that, he refers to the proposal of the first one, but he doesn't really say that it is a hypothesis. He would keep silent about it or give it the status of established science. Now, a third person will go into a third paper studying a specific third part of the problem, and he will refer to the work of the first two as if it was established science. And what you will end up with is a set of 10 hypotheses together proposing solutions that will work coherently with each other to explain the theory, but none of them is actually established science. And you call the product of this work a theory. You call it a theory while none of its components deserve this status. But why is this happening? You need to remember, number one, it is mainly because of number one, because evolutionists consider that evolution is a fact, and even if they do not understand how something happens, it does not mean that evolution did not cause it. So even if there is something at the status of a hypothesis, they still grip to it, even if it is just a hypothesis, and they consider the whole thing an explanation. And you will find this repeated so many times over the theory. It gives the illusion that you have a theory, while the reality is you have a set of hypotheses that are gripping to each other and helping each other to exist exactly like a house of cards. And the problem is that if one card fails, then you get what typically happens to a house of cards. The whole structure will fall down. So you will find in many cases evolutionists gripping to a hypothesis because there is no other explanation. They will say, we will grip to this until there is something better. But for now, it is this. Now, once again, I call upon people doing this research and ask them, and especially also to science explainers. Somebody asks you a question. You say that there is an explanation, and essentially the explanation is a set of hypotheses, but you assert that the explanation exists, or that it definitely happened this way, or it must have happened this way, or it must have happened in some specific way. Is this specific way of evolution, is this fair to yourself, and fair to the scientific method, and fair to your audience, and fair to the general public, that you are giving them explanations that evolution did this and that, while there is really no evidence? There is really nothing at the status for theory. Let's look to the next point. Now, the third point is tricky linguistics. And under this, we will find many examples that, as a seeker of truth, you must be very careful of. So if you look, for example, at this picture on the slide, the one on the left is actually a gliding possum, and the one on the right is actually a gliding squirrel. And those two are completely different animals. Even evolution does not claim they are coming from the same common ancestor. Now, this is a problem for evolution because this is not the only example. There are many examples. And the main assertion of evolution, the main line of thinking was, look at how those animals look the same, but there are differences. So this must be because they are coming from the same ancestor. Now, these examples cause a problem because homoplasy in this case does not lead to homology. i.e., similarity does not lead to common descent. So the evolutionary mindset invents a new term, and they call it convergent evolution. And convergent evolution is when two animals of two different classes or categories or families eventually look the same. And the explanation is that because their environment will cause similar paths of evolution that will cause them to look the same so that they fit in similar environments. So now when you are having an argument about homology and homoplasy and you put this, they will say, no, but this is also explained by evolution. It is called convergent evolution. So here I am putting a red alert for people who are reading papers about evolution and looking at terms. Whenever you see a term where the word evolution is stuck there, do not take it for granted that this is evolution, because there is so much of this kind of use, of unfair use of linguistics. And again, for evolutionists, remember the backdrop. Evolution is always there. Evolution is the fact. For them, they are just writing evolution there because they have a belief that this is the thing. But if you are looking for a neutral point of view, do not fall for this. Look at the facts. Forget the names. The names mean nothing at all. The other thing is giving similar names for different phenomena or for different concepts. So, for example, in the study of the matter of how we have multicellular organisms, I'm asking this question: how come we have multicellular organisms? So somebody will send me a research paper saying, look, here in the lab, a single cell organism went into multicellularity under threat of predation. But when you look at the paper, you will find that it's only a colony. Of course, in concept, a colony is multiple cells, multiple individuals sitting together. So you shouldn't be calling this multicellularity, should you? Because when you say multicellularity, it's not very obvious if you mean multicellularity in terms multiple unicellular individuals sitting together or multiple cells who are together one organism, like a squirrel. Definitely, a squirrel, which is a multicellular organism, is completely different from a colony of algae, for example. So this is once again very tricky, and you have to take very good care, because when you say that there is no path of evolution from a unicellular to a multicellular organism, somebody will throw at you a paper and tell, here you go, in the lab, a few weeks or few months or 1 year, and one algae became a multicellular organism. And when you look, it is just one algae became 8 algae sitting together in a colony. And the third thing about linguistics is that in many cases, you will find strange terms. After some time, you will get used to it, but this is the danger. So there are specific terms that evolution will avoid using and will put replacement terms, because those terms that are the common terms will have implications. When you're talking about free will, it will lead you to something like a soul. So, no. When you are talking about self, it will lead you to something like a soul. So, there will not be self and selflessness. There will be individuality. Look for survival. When you are saying something is pre programmed to do this under that specific condition, you will not find this word pre-programmed. It's a pre-adaptation. You will find a new word that maybe you have never heard, acceptation, for example. So those three things, you need to be wary of those three things. You need to be very conscious of those three things when you are reading scientific papers. When you find terms that are strange, stop at them. Do not take the term for granted. You have to understand where and in what context is this term used, and if the term has many meanings, you have to be very careful if the term is used, so you do not fall in this tricky linguistics. Now, the fourth part will be the use of hedging language. And the problem is also the excessive use of this kind of language, and especially when you are looking at science explainer videos. But even, unfortunately, in scientific articles and sometimes in scientific papers. And you will find a sentence written like this: this might have happened this way. This is an explanation that might tell us how this has happened, or that might tell us how this might have occurred, or this explanation might serve as a way to understand how this could have occurred, etc. Out of those sentences, it will be now according to your perception. And when you later argue that you told me that this is explained by the theory of evolution, and this then became my belief, then you will get the answer: I didn't tell you that the theory of evolution says this. I told you that it might have happened this way. I told you that we have a hypothesis like this, etc., etc. So you have to be very careful when you are reading those scientific papers. You have to also be careful when you are listening to the linguistics, because in many cases, the attitude of the person who is explaining to you the argument of the theory of evolution will be a very strong and assertive attitude. While if you look into his language, you will find many hedging terms. So do not be deceived by the attitude and look exactly into what is being said. And once again, I call upon the science explainers. I call upon the people who are doing videos on YouTube and the internet saying that the theory of evolution is the explainer of everything. And then later in the video, you say that this is a hypothesis and this is something that we might understand later, and we do not have a solution for this, but there are proposals, etc. Why do you start very assertive and very sure, and then in the middle, the details are a bunch of maybes and might be's and appears to be and perhaps? Is this consistent and honest way of explaining science to the public? Is it correct to give an impression of assertiveness and being sure and confidence, while all the details are not like that? Because miserably enough, this happens into so many questions, including the most sensitive and existential questions of all, of the questions of how the universe came to existence, how organic chemistry came to existence, how cellular life came to existence, and how multicellular organisms came to existence, and how our consciousness and free will came to existence. And if there are no answers to those questions, where are the answers then? Why all this confidence, while then to the details you use so many hedging terms? And once again, for the truth seekers, look very well into the linguistics and do not be deceived by sense of confidence that is not based on solid foundation of facts and evidence. Now, the fifth point, which is one very important and very dangerous point, is unobservability. And what this means is that when there is an issue under study, then the theory of evolution will only do that much of the explanation in an observable matter, and then tell you that the remaining piece, this might be 1% and the rest is 99%, or this is 1 of 1,000 and the rest is 999 of 1,000 of the problem. It will tell you, well, the rest needs to happen in tens of millions or hundreds of millions or billions of years, so we cannot show you. For example, when I made the question of transition from unicellular organism to multicellular organism, somebody will tell me, well, look, in the lab, in 35 generations or in few months or in 1 year, one unicellular organism made a multicellular colony. So, okay, but multicellular colonies are already abundant in nature. This proves nothing. So he says, but then the multicellular colony will become a multicellular organism through random mutations that will make some cells specialized through natural selection, and then they will form tissues and they will bind together into organs and they will form multicellular. So I say, show me. So he says, but this needs millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions and billions of years. I cannot show you. So what do you expect? Do you expect me to believe your claim for the 999 of 1,000 of the pieces of the problem because you have showed me 1 of 1,000 that is already observable in nature and I did not need you to show me in the first place? I am asking a genuine question. Is this anything like the scientific method? Is this anything like being fair to yourself as a researcher and being fair to the scientific community and to the general public as an audience? Is this fair to perpetrate and propagate as theory of evolution explains phenomena and is observable, while over and over and over and over again, what happens is that only a very small piece can be done in an experiment, and the huge remainder cannot be shown under the excuse that it needs huge time? And then you would say that you have made an explanation and you would add this as a hypothesis, or even miserably call it a theory and put it within the house of cards. Is this fair science? I'm calling upon the people who are doing this to be fair to themselves and to be honest to the audience who are taking their word and are not digging in the papers, are not seeing what is really observable and what is really not. They just hear from you the conclusions and consider it correct because they trust you. Are you doing the thing that is appropriate to the trustworthiness that you are taking from the people? And I also call upon the people who are seeking truth to be very careful when a conclusion is told to you, to be sure that this conclusion is done through a real experiment and that this real experiment is really repeatable, testable, and observable. All right, truth seekers, we have gone through 5 points out of 10. We are going to use these points later to analyze scientific papers about evolution and to complete our responses to science explainers on the topic. So, since I do not like to make the videos so long, I will stop here and we continue in part 2, which should be out in a couple of days maximum. So if you have liked and enjoyed this video, please like it, share it with those who are interested in this topic. Make sure that you have subscribed to the channel and clicked your notifications button so you will get notifications for the new videos in due course. Peace be upon you all. Have a great time and see you again soon.